A major week in the political world as Donald Trump formally accepted the GOP nomination for president at the Republican National Convention. More and more Democratic lawmakers are asking President Biden to step down.
WGN political analyst Paul Lisnek joins us in studio to discuss. Good morning, Paul.
No quiet time till November.
No. So what is the current state right now? We hear that all these different Democrats coming out and saying, yes, we do feel that President Biden should step down. He is listening to us and he's hearing people, but then we hear that it seems like he's doubling down and saying, hey, I'm campaigning next week.
And those are the difference in reports that you're getting. Just this morning, Senator Joe Manchin came out and said that the president should step down. On my show, Congressman Mike Quigley will be here. He was one of the earlier ones to call for him to step down. But reports are as well, everything from the president understands the potential need to step down to he's digging his heels in and going nowhere. My take on it is this. It's one thing to sort of read about a congressman, senators, or various members of that who are going to step out and ask him to step down. But when Nancy Pelosi got involved, and Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries, but when Nancy Pelosi, who's kind of the general here, when she decided it was time to go, she's never said that, not publicly, then I think that the handwriting gets to be on the wall that he'll eventually get the message. But time is running short.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, and that timeline, because they've got Ohio, right? And then, of course, the DNC here, right? What is the timeline looking like?
So your reference to Ohio is that Ohio had changed its law requiring that all names on the ballot had to be there by early August. So the Democrats had to create this virtual balloting, and that's going to be like August 6th, I think it is, so early August. And they're not backing off from having that date. Ohio, by the way, changed its law to say, no, they're not going to require that, but the Democrats are fearful that they'll change their mind. So right now, that's the schedule. The convention's not until August 19th, but they don't have that long to wait. And how it is they handle that is anybody's guess. There are a variety of things they could do. Everything from, let's pretend the president steps down, everything from him anointing Vice President Harris. It would make sense. He picked her in the first place, right, to be the vice president, to saying, look, let's have this be an open effort. And what does open effort mean? Are the delegates going to vote on that? Are superdelegates going to come in? Are the party leaders going to step in? Are there going to be some version of open primaries because people are calling for that? It's just so uncertain, and all of that spells a mess for the Democratic Party.
I'm looking at Senator Elizabeth Warren saying, I'm going to stand behind Joe Biden if he decides to stay in the race, but if he doesn't, I would like to see Kamala Harris be the presidential nominee. What are some of the other names that you're hearing that potentially we could see if this doesn't indeed occur?
So, and by the way, every Democrat, if Biden ultimately stays in, will get behind Biden.
Yes.
There's nobody who's going to go against that. So that being said, I still think Kamala Harris is the best shot they have because the money, the $90+ million that's in the DNC bank account, so to speak, that can go to her. She's already on the ballot, so that goes to her. If she steps out, it's a whole different ballgame in terms of where the money can go and what would happen. That being said, I think the attention, Lauren, to be honest, is more on a who might her running mate be.
Okay.
And some of those names are the same.
Yeah.
Right? There's talk about Josh Shapiro and whether he would come in from Pennsylvania. The J.D. Pritzker talk, and I'm saying that because I see we put his picture up. He's not going to be the pick. Gretchen Whitmer, and JB's a nice guy. It's not about that, but just Illinois doesn't bring anything to the ticket. Illinois is going blue. So you look at Gretchen Whitmer, who potentially brings Michigan. Josh Shapiro, who potentially brings Pennsylvania, and some of these, North Carolina. So the point is, and you see, by the way, Mark Kelly, Arizona.
Yeah, Arizona. Yeah.
What all of those, most of them have in common is they're bringing critical states to the party, states that shouldn't be in play but are right now, and so that's what that would hopefully shore up. Could you put some of those people at the top of the ticket? You could, but once again, they don't have automatic access to the money.
Well, and with all of this, you had mentioned this, but this in-party squabbling, I mean, how do you recover from this? Is there enough time?
During former President Trump's rally yesterday, and I watch all of them, and one of the things he said was, they don't even know who they're running, and I don't even know who they're running, and whatever. And that's the, if you're out there and you're waiting for Democrats to get their act together, it's going to be very tough to bring it together in these final months that remain. Now, that being said, look, we have short memories. People have short memories. So the truth is, once the Democrats figure out what they're doing, I think things will gel fairly quickly. But look, there was a recent poll that showed, I think, 20% don't even know who Vice President Kamala Harris is. So you've got some name recognition and selling to do, whoever that person is. And the concern for Democrats is people may just look at that and just go, this is just a mess. How can I put my vote there? The problem is that's what they're talking about, and not the record of former President Trump, which of course includes convictions and other charges and stuff. That just seems Democrats aren't putting that at the top of the plate, and that's what they need to do in this election.
Any moments that struck you during Donald Trump's rally yesterday?
Well, he was, it was like whatever happened last week, he's moved well beyond it. He talked about it. But, he's back to his old thing, talking about, Crooked Joe and Crazy Nancy.
The unifying message is not.
The unifying message, now what's there is the Trump message, but that's what people love. That's what they're behind on the Republican side. So he's not changing his tune because why should he?
Right.
Yeah, a lot going on. And
absolutely.
Thank you for joining us.
And I'll be back at 9 o'clock again with Congressman Mike Quigley, who will be with me talking about all of this. We're going to get the latest because we're live. So we're going to see what he knows and what's happening in the Democratic Party. So I know you guys will stay on and watch the show as well.
Thanks so much, Paul. Appreciate it.